Good afternoon and welcome to today's session on simplifying school self-evaluation. I'm Daniel O'Brien. I'm actually the founder of Opius and the creator of iAbacus, which is one of the online tools that we'll be looking at later in the session. I've had the privilege of working with school leaders now for about 25 years, and my focus over the last 10 years has been solely on school self-evaluation and improvement planning. And hopefully you'll see today why that has been my focus. I'm absolutely passionate about simplifying and streamlining this process for busy education leaders. So, how is the session going to work today? Well, we're going to break it down into 3 different sections. First of all, we're going to look at the Abacus model. This beautifully simple self-evaluation, diagnostic and improvement planning model that's being used in schools for about 40 years. Created by a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, John Pierce, who was himself a head teacher principal. So that's the first section, looking at the Abacus model. Then we're going to look at the iAbacus tool, how we're able to take this fantastic model and integrate it into a simple online tool that you will be able to take away at the end of this session and use in your schools. And then finally, we'll have a question and answer session where you'll get to ask any questions. Hopefully we'll be able to answer those in the session, and I'll also talk about some frequently asked questions that people have posted in the past. So let's get started. What is the Abacus model? Where did it come from and why do schools use it? Well, as I mentioned, it was actually created by a good friend of mine, John Pierce. He was himself a teacher. He was a subject leader, a head teacher, a principal, and then he was also an inspector. But if you met John, you'd instantly become very aware that in fact his heart was in school leadership and school improvement. He was a fantastic school improvement consultant and worked with many schools over decades, in fact. And he came up with this model, a fantastically, beautifully simple model to help people look at what they do with a view to doing it better. And he used an abacus. Now, in workshops, in planning sessions, John would actually use one of those great big flip charts with kind of A1 sheets of paper and a marker, and he'd work with you and talk through this model and help you evaluate and think about why you were at that point and how you could improve. But for the purpose of today, in this webinar, I'm going to use one of John's wooden abacuses that I managed to steal from his home. So let's just go through the model. Okay, now the reason we use an abacus, because it's visual and it's interactive, but also because it helps us to break things down. So John quite quickly realized that you could take anything that you want to improve, school effectiveness, operational intelligence, business, whatever you want to improve, and break it down into various aspects or domains. So for example, schools in Ireland obviously use the Looking at Our Schools framework. So you could take an abacus and you could think about each of these beads representing an area or a domain from that framework. So for example, you might have a bead for learner experiences. You might have a bead for teachers' collaborative practice, a bead for managing the organisation. And on the abacus, the beads represent these different areas that we can think about evaluating. And over here on an abacus, this side represents highly effective or excellent or outstanding. Sometimes actually the language that we use isn't the main thing, it's where we are on this journey towards highly effective. So on the abacus, highly effective, effective, ineffective. Maybe if you're a DESH school and you're working to the 7 areas or the 7 aspects of improvement, your abacus would be slightly different. You might have a bead for attendance, one for retention, a bead for literacy, a bead for numeracy, and you can see how that would work. So the abacus beads give us an immediate kind of visual representation on where we think things are. And the process would work like this. First of all, you'd be asked, okay, well, where would you put, let's say, this bead here for teachers' collaborative practice in your school? Would you slide it right over here? If you had a bead for learner outcomes, where would that be? And instinctively, people can make judgments about where they feel things are at. It's a natural question. How fit are you? How good at art are you? And people instinctively know. And it's the same with school effectiveness. If you've been in your school for a while, your professional judgment, your intuition, you'll know where things are. So straight away you can probably slide a bead for that teacher's collaborative practice. Where would you put it in your school? Maybe actually you think it's highly effective and you'd put it over here. Now that's just an initial judgment. What John would do is start to work through the model. And the first question in the model is, what criteria have you based that judgment on? Because in education, there's often a framework, a criteria, key indicators of high quality performance, KPIs, and these are the things that can help inform a judgment. If you're making a judgment about your performance as an individual, as a teacher, there will be professional standards that you can look at. This is criteria, and this helps inform that judgment. So the first question, what criteria did you base that judgment on? The second question, what evidence do you have to support that judgment? If you put the bead here for managing the organisation, what practices, policies, what evidence can you signpost that supports that judgment? Because in reality, if you don't have the evidence to support that judgment, then maybe it was a bit optimistic and actually your bead's over here. So, evidence. Next question, what has helped you get to that point? So let's say in your school that you say collaborative practices here. What are the things, the policies, practices, people, what are the things that have pushed that bead to where it is today? What has got you to this point? The helping factors. If we can diagnose the helping factors, then they're the things that we need to strengthen to further push the bead in the right direction. We need to do those things more often. But also, what are the hindering factors? What are the issues, the barriers? If our bead is here and we're not that confident that collaborative practice is where it should be, what are the factors that are pushing it in the wrong direction or are pinning it where it is? Because these hindering factors, we need to remove them. We need to weaken them. We need to put actions in place to get rid of them. And in that way, our beads will start to move in the right direction. So the final stage in that model, if you like, is, okay, we know about the helps and hinders. We've diagnosed them. What can we do to eliminate those hindering factors and strengthen those helping factors and push the bead in the right direction? And that's why this model naturally moves into action planning. So you can see it's a end-to-end model. It starts with making a judgment, self-evaluation. It helps us to think about criteria. What have we based that judgment on? It helps us to think about evidence. What can we signpost to say to support that judgment? What are the helping and hindering factors pushing it in either direction, and what can we do about those things? And that's going to help move our bead. Now, this universal model, it was used, or it is used, with teachers looking at their own performance. It's used with subject leaders looking at departmental effectiveness or curriculum areas. But of course, it's used by schools in school self-evaluation and improvement planning. And that's why it's used by schools in Ireland, looking at our schools framework, the LAOS 22. And it's also used by DESH schools in those areas that I mentioned. And it's used actually across the globe in businesses, in enterprise, in charities. It's a universal model, and it's simple. It's once you understand that abacus model, sliding beads leading to improvement, you can use the language, you can use that model in all areas. So what we've done is take that model and turn it into an online tool. And we've avoided the mistake that many software companies make, and that's the kind of the problem where you take something that is simple and effective and you make it complex. You put too many features in there. You make it all about the evidence or all about the data. With iAbacus, the tool that I'm about to show you, hopefully you'll see that we've kept it simple, straightforward, and that makes it sustainable. Something that you will want to use, something that you'll want to log back into to update. Now, straight from the off, what I think we should do is just clarify what you will get as being an attendee at this webinar. You will be able to go away and use the tool that we're about to use to demonstrate and that model in your school, and you can do that for 3 months. We will give you full access to our SSE support package, and that will give you access to the tool, access to us, my team, the team around me that will help support you through that process, and you get that for 3 months. Now at the end of that 3 month period, you can extend that and go on to our full SSE support package if you want, and prices start at €275 per year. Okay, I don't often want to talk about money, but I feel it's fair at the outset. Have a look at this tool, see if it works in your school. Try it for 3 months, and if it does and you're happy, you can download your PDF, your school self-evaluation action plan, and take that away, or you may want to consider subscribing to one of our support packages. So let's have a look at the tool. Let me just screen share now and show you how it works. So when you log into this tool with the access that you'll be given as part of this webinar, you'll be able to create yourself a new abacus, and when you do that you will see a range of templates to choose from. Okay, there are templates in here, like I said, with the Laos framework. There are those for the DESH schools, there are those for well-being reviews, digital learning frameworks. In fact, I have a screenshot here just showing the different templates that you can use within the tool. As I said, we take frameworks, we simplify them, and we put them into the abacus model. So for your next 3 month period, you will probably be focusing on either the Laos framework, if I can just bring it up here. In fact, what we'll do is we'll create a new abacus and we'll work through it. So you'll either be working with the Laos framework or the DESH framework. Let's bring that in here now, okay, and we'll start to see how it works. So here is a new fresh abacus. You'll see that it's got the domains down the left hand side, and you'll see that it's got levels across the top. Okay, it doesn't at this point have any beads on it. Now, I know a fair proportion of our attendees today are actually from the DESH schools. So what we'll do is I'll just show you a new abacus using that framework. Okay, it won't take me long. All I need to do is choose a different template, and you'll see here areas down the left hand side that we recognize that we want to evaluate. We don't use ineffective through to highly effective. We've got a different continuum here: weak, fair, satisfactory, good, and very good. It will work in the same way and follow the same process as the other abacus that I'm about to use. So I'll recreate the one that we were talking about a moment ago, and we'll start to use this model. So we're familiar with the structure of an abacus. How does it work? Well, we pick up the bead and we slide it somewhere onto this row, and this is that initial judgment. Where do you think learner outcomes are in your school? Where would you put the bead? And you place it somewhere on the abacus. Now when you do that, it's going to start to lead you through the model. What criteria is behind that judgment? Have we made an accurate judgment based on that criteria? What evidence do we have that we can signpost to justify that judgment? What's our analysis of the situation, those helping and hindering factors? And then of course, what's our action plan? Now you can dive into that model here for this particular bead, or maybe, like I see other users when they use the tool, they slide the bead for quite a few of these different domains, and that actually starts to show where we think we're strong and maybe where we think we need some development work. And it could be we're low in some of the areas, but actually quite strong in others. So let's take this bead for teachers collaborative practice. I've probably chosen the worst one to say. Anyway, collaborative practice, where would we put it? Interestingly, where would you put it in your school? Let's say our initial judgment is that it's highly effective. Let's be really confident and put it up here. Okay, now let's work through the model. Let's check that judgment against the criteria. And of course, because we're using the Laos framework, the criteria that we bring into the tool is the criteria from that framework. And I can see here's the highly effective statements, and I could look down them, I could discuss them with my SLT. Maybe we do this together as a team to try and form that accurate judgment. And actually, on reflection, we look at some of those things, we're doing quite a few of them, but maybe I have to bring that bead more accurately down to just this effective level. It might be top end of effective. Sometimes we do get bogged down in education with the labels. In England we have the Ofsted framework, and there's a lot of consideration, are you good or outstanding? We're always on a journey to improvement. So yes, the judgment is important. It does show us comparatively where we are in different areas, but it's only the first part of the process. It's not the be all and end all. So we always advise people, don't spend too long on making the judgment. Let's get into the process. So we make a judgment about where we feel we are. We check it against the criteria. We then move on to the evidence. Okay. Now, evidence in schools comes in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's qualitative, it's what people are saying, it's feedback, it's comments from improvement advisors, it might even be comments from inspectors. Sometimes it's qualitative, it's about the data, the survey results, the outcomes, the achievement data. All we do in iAbacus is signpost various forms of data. We might triangulate it for different forms of data or evidence. What we can do here is type in our evidence, and if you just bear with me, here we go, I've got a little tool that pre-writes my evidence for me. It won't do this for you, so it's not going to write your evidence statement. This is just an example kind of evidence statement that we can use. So I've put some evidence in here. We always really talk about bullet points. I think they can be quite helpful. They keep it succinct and evaluative. We're saying we've got this piece of evidence, this is what it shows. If there's some evidence in here that you want to draw attention to, you can make it bold. If you've got files that you reference, so maybe you have a survey or curriculum planning document and you want to include it, don't copy and paste it into here. We don't really need the whole document. We need to reference it and then attach it or include it, and that's part of this simplification, is part of this streamlining the process. I worked with a maths leader last week, and he wanted to paste into here tables of data and pie charts, and it was simply a case really of saying, well, what does the data show? It shows that we've made great progress in blah. Well, say that and then just attach the data. So here we can hyperlink to Google Drive or to SharePoint. Wherever you've put your files, you can link to them. So we put the link in here, insert it, and then it will just hyperlink that text. Or if you want to, you can just include a hyperlink to the folder or the document on your drive. If you can't find a hyperlink, you can always attach it if you want to the actual file. The word that I like to use when we're thinking about evidence is signposting. We don't have to go away and create evidence, we just have to point to where it is and say why we're including it. And evidence, as we've said, all different forms, different shapes and sizes. If I'm evaluating my own personal performance and I'm using this tool for appraisal or performance management, my evidence will be quite different to someone evaluating school effectiveness. But it still works. This model is universal. So, signpost the evidence. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the analysis. This is actually my favourite stage in the process, because this is really where we start to think why we're at this point. If you remember the original model, we slide those beads. There are things pushing this bead in the right direction, things that we're already doing that have got us to this point. These are the helping factors. And all we do at this stage is start to think about what they are. What are the things that have helped collaborative practice or whatever we're evaluating in our school, and we list them. We just type them in, a bit like a bullet point list, or we might say we're brainstorming here. We're thinking about the things that have helped. Now there may be some things in here that have really helped, and what we can do is push those to the top. We can say, actually, this has really helped in our school this year, and this has too. There may be other things that have helped, and you can put those in here. So I had a software tool that just kind of typed these in for me. You will come up with these things for your school, the helping factors. And as you can guess, on the other side, on this side, we start to enter the hindering factors. Now, some people will be quite good at this. You may have colleagues in school, members of your senior leadership team, and they're the ones that can identify the problems. Brilliant. Let's put them in here. Don't be afraid of negative language. If something's limited or something's insufficient or something's a problem, put it in as a hindering factor. Again, if it's something that's a priority, we can move that to the top and say, actually, this is a key issue in our school. It's holding back collaborative practice. We need to do something about it. And that's the key factor here. We're identifying those helping and hindering factors because we want to do something about them. And that's going to lead naturally into our action planning. So we move into the action planning. We've got a list here now of the things that are helping and the things that are hindering. Now, we may have done quite a detailed diagnostic, and that's brilliant. We've got a good list here now of the things that we know are helping and hindering, but we can't do something about all of them. We've got to prioritise. We've got to be strategic. We've actually got to be realistic because of workload, because maybe you're a small primary school and you don't have staff to tackle all of these issues. So what we can do here is we can hide the ones that we're not going to work on, the ones that are not our priority, or the ones that were out of our control at the moment. So you'll see here there's an icon just to hide them. So let's take out the ones that we can't do anything about, or we don't need to do anything about. So we don't need to strengthen that. That's not an issue at the moment as a priority, and some of these we can take out. Okay, and what that does is it leaves us with some priority helping and hindering factors to work on. Okay, and then it's just about expanding them and saying what we're going to do about them. Now, interestingly, some people look at action planning as a view of just solving the issues, solving the problems. To be strategic and to actually lead to improvement, what we really need to do as well is strengthen those helping factors. So here, this one we put in earlier, the establishment of teacher expertise days for promoting peer learning and innovation. If that's something that's gone well in your school, then maybe you want to expand that and say what you're going to do about that. How are you going to repeat that? Put a process in place to support it. So all we do is we pick up on this planning strip and we define the action. What are we going to do about this issue or this thing we want to strengthen? Who's going to lead on that? Be responsible for it? What will our success criteria look like? How will we know when this is going to have an impact or when this is having an impact? And then with any action, it's always good to have a deadline. Otherwise, nature takes its course, busy workload and things slip. So let's put a deadline in here, whenever that may be. Or sometimes in schools, it's about doing something once a year, once a term. So you can put a frequency in here. And of course, we'll go away, we'll work on this action, and hopefully that will lead to some progress. So we might want to update the progress slider here, and we might actually just put a note in here to say how that's going. So let's just recap what we've done here. We've slid that bead to make a judgment. We've checked that judgment against criteria, and we've used the LAOS framework. We've evidenced it by saying, okay, this is how it is at the moment, this is what we're already doing, these are the proof, the statements that we have and the data and the evidence. We've analysed, very, very importantly, what's got us to this position, but also what's hindering us. And then in the action planning, we've prioritised some of these helping and hindering factors, and some of them we've gone into here and we've put a plan in place. And I could pick up another one. I could say, okay, what are we going to do about this high dependency on just a few teachers with specialised skills? Let's put an action in there. And it's the same simple planning strip. What are we going to do? Who's going to do it? What does the success criteria look like? When do we need to do it by? Universal model. We can apply it to anything. Now, if we do that and we do it for all of these areas, or we do it for some of our priority areas, what we'll end up with is a really robust, clear, concise school improvement plan, school self-evaluation and improvement plan. I'll show you what it'll look like. It'll look like this PDF document as I bring it up here. We can just export a PDF. It'll have the abacus on with the bead positions, but more importantly, behind every bead will be our evidence, what we've signposted, any files that we've hyperlinked to, the all-important helping and hindering factors, and include, and of course, our action planning with our progress updates. So if you're using the LAOS framework, this is what your school improvement plan will look like. It'll be really clear, really concise. You can give it to governors and to stakeholders. They won't need to read through lots of text. They'll pick up where you're at. They'll see why with the helps and hinders, and they'll see what you're going to do about it. Now, if you're working in a school and you're a DESH school where you're creating an action plan, maybe a 3-year action plan, what will that look like? Well, let me just show you, because here's one I made earlier. So let me just make sure that I pick up the right one, not that one. Just bear with me. Okay, so same format. It's an abacus. We've got our bead positions on there showing where our progress is, and if we click on a bead, you can have the criteria, of course the evidence. It's going to be in a similar format, the analysis and the action planning. Let's have a look at what this looks like when we export it. Let's just export this as a PDF. So here's our overview of the 7 areas. Is it 7 areas? There looks more there. And down, if we go to retention, which is one of the priority areas that you'd be looking at, there's your evidence to show what you're already doing, your analysis of why retention is where it is, and of course your improvement plan with your progress updates. So that's why this tool can be used by middle leaders, schools of special schools, post-primary or primary. It's a universal model. So just want to go back into the tool because there's something else I want to show you. We'll use this abacus actually at the moment. When you go away and you work on those hindering factors and you put actions in place, if you remember, the model says that if we can remove the hindering factors, strengthen the helping factors, those beads will nudge in the right direction. And that's what we want to see: improvement, growth, development. Now, in your abacus, you will log back in again, and you might actually go back in and you might update bits of evidence and bits of analysis, and you might just be tempted to nudge that bead in the right direction. Now, that's perfectly fine. You can do that. You can slide that bead to where you think you are in that current position. But let me just show you another thing that you can do. Leave that bead where it is, okay? That's your first cycle of self-evaluation and improvement planning. What you can do is you can pick up another bead, a new bead, and make a new judgment. And you can say, actually, this is where we were. We've improved because we've eliminated some of those barriers to improvement. We're now here, or even here. And you drop that bead, it knows you've made a new judgment. It'll actually allow you to copy everything across. So it's not like you have to start again now. We've got a new bead. We'll work on that one in a moment, but look at the old bead here. That's kind of faded. It's our old judgment. This is where we were. We can still go back into it at any point, and we can have a look at the evidence, why we were at that point and what we were doing about it. But now you'll pick up this new bead and you'll work on this. It might be that you go into the evidence and you actually update this and say new data for 2024 shows retention is at this level. You'll go into the analysis and you'll say, actually, some of these things we can take out. They're no longer the priorities, but actually we've got a new issue. If we want to develop further, this is what we now need to work on. So you can see it's a very natural cyclical approach, and you can record improvements maybe over your 3-year projection. You put this in place now, 3 years later down the line, you've been able to map your improvement journey, demonstrate it with these abacus beads, and see the insights on how you managed to do that. So hopefully you've seen that iAbacus replicates the model. It streamlines it for us. It makes it simple. It's a tool that, yes, it's a technical tool, but did it seem scary? Did it seem overly cumbersome? Is it something you want to log in and have a play with, to try it? Well, brilliant. What we'll do at the end of this session, I will prepare an email. I'll send that to you. That will include your login details. It'll also include a link to this recording, so you can watch this back if you want, see how it works. You might want to skip the first bit about the model and the abacus, the wooden abacus, and come straight to this tool and see how it works. Okay, so before we move into the Q&A section, what I thought I'd do is just re-clarify what you get and what you might want to upgrade to. Okay, so at any point in your 3-month use of this tool and use of our support services, you can actually upgrade to our full support package, our full SSE support package. For 5 members of staff for the whole year, that's €275. Okay, so that €275, it buys you access to more users. It buys you access. In fact, when you think about more users, that actually enables you to start to develop a culture of SSE in your school. It actually allows you to distribute leadership, because it's not just you using iAbacus. You can give it to your senior leadership team. You might be able to give it to some of your middle leaders and have them use it. And you'll also be able to access the additional templates. So if you're a school working on the Laos framework or the DESH framework, you'll have that anyway. But maybe when you understand the model and you like the software, you want to extend that and use that for the well-being review that you need to do in school. Or maybe you want to do a digital learning improvement strategy, you can use it for that. Or you want to look at the Educate Together ethos, again, you can use it for that. So really that extra funding that you're going to provide to support SSE will direct it through more users, more templates. And then finally, if you're able to use it with more users, you're able to do something really special in iAbacus. And I think actually this is where the power of the tool really comes into play. Let's just say, for example, you gave it to a group of teachers or a group of middle leaders looking at a subject area. Okay, so you're doing the school improvement plan, that's fantastic. But now you're giving it to subject leaders to look at their curriculum areas. If you do that, what you're able to do just in 2 clicks is overlay their abacuses. Okay, and straight away now we're looking at a combined abacus. I can see the judgments of my middle leaders, my subject leaders. I can see where they're placing their beads, which initially is going to give me that overview of where things are at. But more importantly, I can dive down into the detail. And we know, because behind each bead there's a judgment, and if I went into this bead, you can see here I've got 2 members of staff that have put their bead here. One of them's the art department. Let's have a look at what Jerry's been saying. I know that behind that bead there will be evidence, the information, the things that Jerry is signposting to show that they're at that point, but also the analysis. What has this department said has helped them get to this point, and what do they think is hindering them? And is that actually similar to some of the other departments? In fact, what I can do is I can stack these abacuses and look through them. I can even generate a PDF report and export a PDF document, a bit like we did for the school improvement plan. I can do this and get an overview of all of these different abacuses with all of those helps and hinders. And when you look at the helps and hinders and the action planning, what you're actually looking at are insights within those departments, within those subject areas. So I would advise you to get used to the tool, see if it works for you at senior leadership level. If it does, think about cascading this into your middle leaders, even into some of your teachers. Think about the model. It's a great coaching, mentoring model. Where do you think you are? How do you know that? What do you think is helping or hindering? What do you need to do about it? And that's why in iAbacus we have templates even for teacher reflection and growth planning. You can see that it's not in the format of an inspection model or an inspection framework. It's very much developmental. So that's what you can get into if you want the full support package, but you've got 3 months to really take advantage of the tool and get some benefit from it. Any questions? We're about got time for questions. Yeah, we've left a good slot here for questions. First question is it available in Irish? Okay, well, let's have a look at the templates. If I show you in here, then if the framework is available in Irish, it will be converted to an abacus in that format. So we can see here we've got the Laos 2022 framework in the relevant language, and that's the beauty of iAbacus. It's completely customizable. Okay, every template in iAbacus, you can tailor it in your school. That sometimes might be a language change, Or let's say, for example, you're starting a new abacus for your school, and actually what you want to do is focus on certain areas. What you can even do is customize it, and you can take out those areas that are not this year's focus. They're not the domains that you're going to prioritize. And when you go back to that abacus, can you see how I've condensed that? I'm just looking at domain number 4. I'm looking at domain 1 and 2 from the leadership and management section. So yes, it will be in Irish, but also it can be customized and tailored to your context, the setting of your school. What other templates do we get access to if we subscribe? Okay, well, I'll just drop down that list here. You can see Educate Together, the wellbeing ones down here. In fact, if I just show you the wellbeing one, I think I might have had it open actually. Just bear with me. Yep, here's the wellbeing template. Some of the templates that we give you access to: digital learning, improvement strategy, wellbeing review, educate ethos, and any others that you want to be designed. We actually design templates for you. That's part of the service. So if you want a custom bespoke abacus, get in touch and we'll create one for you. But you'll find that you've got access to templates like this, where you can make a judgment about your well-being culture. Interestingly, look at the approach. It's exactly the same. Let's check the criteria. This will help us inform the judgment. Now, interestingly here, we don't just have text that we can read, we have interactive statements. Okay, so these are pulled straight from the wellbeing policy. And what you can do as a school is you can go down these and you can RAG rate against them. Okay, so let's just say, for example, you dropped the bead right up here into highly effective because you think your wellbeing policy and your culture and your wellbeing environment is absolutely spot on. But as you start to go down this RAG rateable criteria here, you identify quite a few key areas that you still need to work on, or policies that need to be put in place, or practices that need to be changed. Then actually, maybe up here you'd have to kind of adjust that, moderate that judgment. Okay, so this is the wellbeing template, works in exactly the same way, and when you export that as a PDF, that will give you your wellbeing review and action plan, and it'll be in the format of an abacus. Any other questions? Okay, is the €275 per year? It is. Okay, if you want to keep using the tool, take advantage of all the new templates that we put in, the updated criteria that we update, and have year-on-year action planning and evaluation. As you saw, it's quite a cyclical tool. Then it's an annual cost at $275 for those 5 users. Can it be used by teachers? I did show briefly that teacher template. Let me see if I can find it again. Okay, this is what happens when you create too many abacuses on one screen. But yes, the answer to the question is yes. It's all about the template structure. Okay, if you've got a template with professional standards on it, then that template is going to be useful for teachers. You don't have to use professional standards. So in here, I've got a group of staff that I've been working with, maybe ones that I've been coaching and supporting. What I can do here is select those abacuses, and just like we might overlay subjects, what I'm overlaying here are individual teachers. And what we've done for this abacus is just have 3 different areas that they evaluate: their teaching practice or their teaching performance, their leadership. Often teachers have a role, maybe it's just phonics or literacy, or it's a bit of a specialism in that specialist area. How are they going with that leadership, and how is their well-being? And we've got a few beads here that I'd be concerned about if this was my school. There's some excellent practice by the look of it here, and I'd be clicking on here and saying, okay, what's their evidence for that judgment? What helped them get to that point? If I want to, what I can do is even stack that information like we did earlier, and I can look through. You will spot things as well when you start to look through abacuses. Say, for example, here, Miss Cassidy. Well, if you look at this, really doing quite well as far as teaching is going, but leadership and then well-being. Okay, and what you'd be wanting to do really is look at the evidence and the analysis behind those beads. That's going to reveal the insights. So, any more questions? Let's just go back to that screen and we'll just leave it on there for a moment. Okay. No, I can't see any more coming in. We've covered most things. When will we get access? Well, I will send an email following the webinar. You can register for that, sign straight in and start to use the tool. If you do need any help or any support when you're using the tool, there's a live chat box here. Okay, so you can click on that and you can enter a question in here, and then one of my colleagues, they will answer that there and then. That's probably one of the best ways to get support. Feel free to email me. You will have my email. If you don't have my email, it's dan@opeus.org. So dan@opeus.org. I'm available to give support. If you need an additional training session, so you need some kind of walkthrough on Zoom, on Google Meet or on Teams, please feel free to request that too. We want to make sure that you get the best use of this tool, that you get to take advantage of this fantastic model that really is helping schools across the globe. So, thank you very much for your time. Have a great evening. Hopefully we shall meet again online soon.